Nowadays, no brand is safe from having a small or maybe a huge problem online. That's why today we're going to talk about my favorite subject,
crisis management.
And to start, we're going to look at 5 things you must do in order to be safe and have a proper plan to handle a crisis for your brand. Welcome back. So the first thing you want to do is establish a clear crisis communication plan. Here you're going to have tools in order for you to identify crises, measure how big or small they are, having a plan to talk about it internally and externally. And the key thing here is to have clear roles and responsibilities, because that way your team knows exactly what to do, how to handle escalations, and that way they can act fast and effectively. When the crisis hits, you need to be able to make a quick assessment. You need to know if this is something small that can be resolved by standard moderation practices, or this is something when your plan it needs to come into action. If that's the case, good, you have a plan. Everybody knows what to do. And having a quick action is going to show your audience that you are in control and you're being responsive. Your transparency is going to help you a lot, and you have 2 levels of transparency in communication. You're going to have internal communication when you let the company know what's happening. How is the crisis team handling this crisis, and what are you doing in order to fix it? What is the communication plan behind it? But you also have an external communication plan. You need to let your audience know that you're aware of what's happening, that you're showing empathy towards them, and that you are taking steps to fix it. If you manage these 2 levels consistently, you are 1 step ahead of the game. When there's a crisis, you need all hands on deck. For that, you need constant monitoring. You need to make sure that you're aware if your plan is working or not. For that, make sure you have a social media listening tool so you can listen to what your audience is saying about the way you're handling this. Based on that, be flexible enough in case your plan is not working the way you want it to work. You can always adapt. You can always change. My recommendation is to have, from the beginning, a plan A, but also a plan B, maybe a C, maybe a D. Be ready for it. Okay, you did it. The crisis is over. You managed it like a rock star. Maybe you made a couple of mistakes, but the only way for you to find out is having a debriefing. Bring everybody who was involved in this plan and ask questions. See what worked, what didn't work. Based on that, you might have to update your plan and policies. And also you might have to bring training just in case when the next crisis hits, which hopefully is not anytime soon, you are ready for it. Now, the key for handling a crisis properly is to have a team that can handle a crisis properly. But that's not up to them. You as a team leader need to make sure that they have everything they need in every way to handle a crisis. A crisis is usually a very stressful and emotional time. So we have a few things, a few tips to give you as a team leader to make sure your team is ready to go when the crisis hits. The first one is pretty simple. Make sure you address that this is a stressful time. It's an emotional distress for the team to handle something that can hurt the brand really bad. So let them know that you're aware about that. Make sure you acknowledge when they do something great. Make sure you correct them when they do something wrong in the right way. If you show support, your team is going to appreciate that a lot, and it's going to work way more efficient. When you're having a crisis, you don't want to improvise. You want to make sure your team is ready. That's when you need to prepare trainings and resources for them. They need to have a shield. They need to have a sword if you're going to send them to fight this crisis in social media. So make sure you have resources and tools for them and they feel comfortable. Update those constantly and make sure that they have easy access to them. The best way to make sure your team feels supported is to have clear communication channels. Always have an open channel for them to reach out to you. Let them know that you're supporting them every step of the way, but also do it the other way. You go and check in what's going on. Do they need help? Sometimes for some team members, it's not easy to ask for help. So make sure you recognize those and go and offer your help when it's needed. Now your team knows that they can count on you, but also foster a team culture where they're not scared to ask help to each other, when they're not scared to give feedback to each other. They're not scared to tackle things as a team. And when that happens, celebrate those successes. Make sure they know you appreciate what they're doing, and that will boost their morale and they'll be working way much efficient as a team. Mental health is going to be key to keep your team up and running. So make sure if you work in a big company, get the right resources, get counseling for them to make sure that they are supported by the company as well. If you don't have that, sometimes a little time off goes a long way. We talked about flexibility before, and here is where you're going to show it. Make sure you're flexible enough to work around their schedules. This is a very stressful time, but you want to show them that you're flexible enough for them to organize their times. As long as we're covering every base, they can organize themselves to have enough time to wind down and make sure that they can recover before they come back and tackle this crisis. We mentioned the plan debriefing before, but use that debriefing to let them express themselves of how did they feel about it? What was the biggest blocker they had as a person? What was the biggest emotional challenge they had? When you have that, also offer recovery time. It doesn't need to be a full week off, but at least being a little bit flexible on their time or when they come back to tackle another crisis, or maybe just come back to work, show that flexibility and they will appreciate that so much. So as you can see, crisis management has two levels. One level is your crisis communication plan, when you have everything in place to make sure your brand survives this. You have the right tools, the right information, the right people on it. But you also have your team side. You need to make sure that they are ready emotionally, physically, mentally to handle this. If you have that, you can handle this well. No worries. So make sure you don't miss our next episode, because we want to continue helping you to become the best social media manager ever. See you next time.